Hey everyone, and welcome. If you've ever tried building really powerful multi-step AI applications, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to get into the absolute heart of LangChain, the thing that literally gives it its name, chains. So let's just start with a feeling I think we've all had. You start playing around with a large language model, and you realize, wait a second, building a real app isn't just one simple API call. Suddenly, there are all these different pieces, and trying to get them to talk to each other just feels, well, messy. Because, this is what it looks like when we do it by hand. First, you've got to carefully put together the perfect prompt. Then you call the model. After you get a response, you have to write code to parse through all that text and pull out just the part you need. And then you have to process that output so it can be used in the next step. Each of these requires its own chunk of code, and you're the one stuck managing how the data gets passed around. It's a ton of manual work. And this right here is where LangChain's big idea changes everything. A chain is basically a pipeline. Just think of it like the glue that lets you snap all those components together into a single workflow. So instead of you manually passing data from one step to the next, the chain just handles it for you. The output of one thing automatically becomes the input for the next. It's that simple. This just illustrates the difference so perfectly. You've got the old way with all those separate manual steps, but then you have the chain way, using something called the LangChain Expression Language, or LCEL. And you get this beautiful, clean syntax. You literally use a pipe symbol to say the prompt flows into the model and the model's output flows into the parser. And a parser is just a tool that tidies up the raw text from the model into something structured and useful. Now, the real magic here isn't just that the code looks nicer, it's that it's way more readable and so much easier to debug. Each piece of that chain can be tested on its own, which is a huge leap forward from that tangled web of manual calls. So now that we see how chains are put together, let's look at the three main types you'll be using. Okay, so let's start with the first and probably most common type of chain, the sequential chain. The best way to think about this one is like a factory assembly line. Each step happens one after another in a predictable, straight line. And that's really the whole idea right there. The result from step 1 gets passed to step 2. The result from step 2 gets passed to step 3, and on it goes. It creates this totally seamless, continuous flow. Now, what's really cool is how flexible this can be. A sequential chain could be super simple, like just taking some text from a user and summarizing it. But it can also handle way more complex stuff. For example, you could give it a topic, have the first LLM call write a whole detailed report, and then have a second LLM call take that brand new report and boil it down to a 5-point summary. See? Each step is building directly on the one that came before it. So the takeaway here is you'll reach for a sequential chain whenever your logic is linear. When each part of your process absolutely needs the result from the part before it to do its job. This makes it perfect for things like those summarization pipelines we mentioned, or really any task that needs that kind of step-by-step thinking. All right, let's move on to our next type, which gives us a totally different kind of power. This is the parallel chain, and I like to think of it as the ultimate multitasker. Instead of doing one thing at a time, it does a bunch of things all at once. So here's the core concept. You take one single input, say a really long document, and you feed it to several different processes at the exact same time. One little subchain could be summarizing it, another could be figuring out the sentiment, and a third could be pulling out all the keywords. They all run in parallel at the same time. This visual just makes it crystal clear, doesn't it? A sequential chain is that straight line. A goes to B, B goes to C. But a parallel chain is like a fork in the road. That one single input, A, kicks off processes B, C, and D all at the same time. So, why would you do this? Well, the biggest reason is efficiency, speed. If the tasks don't actually depend on each other, why wait around for them to finish one by one? You just run them all at once. It's perfect for when you need to do a bunch of different kinds of analysis on the same piece of data before you bring all the results together at the end. And now for our third type, which is where things get really intelligent. This is the conditional chain. The analogy I love for this is that it acts like a smart router or a decision tree for your entire application. This is the moment your AI application actually starts making choices based on the input it gets or maybe the result of a previous step. It can decide which path to follow next. It's basically a classic if this, then that flow, but for entire chains. This table lays it out perfectly. Just imagine your app gets some user feedback. If it analyzes the feedback and decides it's positive, it runs a chain that sends a nice thank you message. But if it's negative, it triggers a totally different chain that alerts customer support. The application is literally adapting its behavior based on the context. This ability to route and make decisions is how we go from simple pipelines to truly dynamic and smart systems. So as we start to bring this all together, it's pretty clear these aren't just separate little tricks. Sequential, parallel, and conditional chains, they are the fundamental building blocks for creating some really sophisticated AI systems. Let's do a quick recap with this awesome table. You've got your sequential chain, that's the assembly line for those linear step-by-step jobs. You've got the parallel chain, that's your multitasker for running a bunch of things at once to save time. And finally, the conditional chain, that's your decision tree for adding smart, adaptive logic to your app. And look, this isn't just theory. Think about it for a second. That smart chatbot that routes your problem to the right department, that's using a conditional chain, an e-commerce site that analyzes a product review for sentiment, keywords, and spam all at once. That's a parallel chain. A tool that takes a rough idea, writes a first draft, and then refines it. You guessed it, that's a sequential chain. These structures are running behind the scenes in the powerful AI tools we see every day. So that really just leaves us with one final thought. We've seen the building blocks, the assembly lines, the multitaskers, and the decision makers. The only question left is, what amazing, intelligent applications are you going to go out and build with them?